In this lesson, you will learn how to solve simple quadratic equation by taking square root. So there are two cases where we can solve the quadratic equation by taking the square root. So the first case is when the equation is written in the standard form and the bx of the standard form is missing. That means the b is 0. We can actually solve the equation by taking the square root. So the second case is when the equation is given to you or is written in vertex form. So in this case, we can also solve the equation by taking the square root. So to be able to solve by taking the square root, we first have to isolate the square part of the quadratic equation on one side, and every other thing has to be on the other side of the equal sign. And then you have to take the square root of both sides and simplify. So let's look at some examples. So this example is very simple. So we have x squared equals to 9. So it has already been isolated. So we are just going to take the square root of both sides. So we take the square root of s squared. The only way to remove square is by taking the square root. And when you take the square root, you also have to add plus or minus. Why do we do that? Is because if you look at this question, you are being asked to find a number that when squared, the answer is going to be a 9. So we know that there are two such numbers. So we have 3, positive 3, and definitely negative 3, because when you square a negative number, okay, you get a positive number. Okay, so we have that. So that's why whenever you are taking the square root of both sides of an equation, you need to put the plus or minus. So in this case, x equals to plus or minus 3, and that's the answer, okay? Negative 3 or positive 3, okay? That's your answer right there. So let's go to another example, example 2. So in this case, in order to be able to isolate the s square, we need to get rid of anything. So we need to take care of the negative 10 and the 8. So how do we take care of the negative 10? Is by adding 10 to both sides. So that gives us 8s squared. If I take it, it's going to be 278 plus 10. Or you can just move it. When you move the negative 10 to this side, it will become a positive number, okay? So in this case, 8s squared equals to 288. So to remove the 8, we divide by 8 on both sides. So that gives us s squared equals to 36. So now I can take the square root of both sides. So the square root of s squared will be plus or minus square root of 36. Okay. So that gives us s equals to plus or minus 6. So in this case, our answer is simply negative 6 and 6. So we have two solutions. In the third example, it's just the same thing. You have to isolate the whatever is squared. So in this case, we have 3x minus 4 squared. We are trying to isolate that. So the only thing that we have to get rid of is this negative 5. So move it to the other side. It will become a positive 5. So we are going to have 3x minus 4 square equals to 20 plus 5. Okay. So that means 3x minus 4 square equals to 25. So in this case now, so because again, we've already isolated the square, so you take the square root of both sides. So the square root of 3x minus 4 square is going to be plus or minus square root of 25. So this will reduce to 3x minus 4 equals to plus or minus 5. So now we can now simplify further to get the value of x. Again, this is negative 4. When you move it to this side, this is negative 4. When you move it to this side, it becomes a positive 4. So that will give us 3x equals to positive 4 plus or minus 5. Okay. Now to get my value of x, I need to divide by 3. Divide both sides by 3. Okay. So x will be equals to 4 plus 5 divided by 3, or s equals to 4 minus 5 divided by 3. So in this case, S is going to be 9 divided by 3, which is equal to 3, or S equals to negative 1 over 3. So S will be equal to 3 or negative 1 over 3. So that is our solution in this case. So for the last example in this video, so this is in word problem. So a relief package is released from a helicopter at 16,000 feet. The height of the package is modeled by the equation H equals to, so we have equation H equals to negative 16t squared plus 1600. Okay, so that's our quadratic equation right there. So we're told in this story that H is the height of the package measured in feet and T is the time in seconds. So the question is how long, that will be time, will it take for the package to hit the ground? So when the package hit the ground, that means our H equals to 0. So in essence, what we are being asked to do is when H equals to 0, what will be the time? So that's what the question is trying to ask. So since we know our H, we can substitute that back into the equation. So H is 0, so we put H equals to 0 equals to negative 16 t squared plus 1600. Okay, so now we simplify. This is a negative 16. Okay, if we move it to the other side of the equal sign, it will become a positive 16. So we have 16t squared equals to 1600. So now we want to divide both sides by 16. Again, we are still trying to isolate the t squared. So t squared will be equals to 100. So now we can take the square root of both sides. Okay, so the square root of t squared equals to plus or minus square root of 100. So in this case, our t equals to plus or minus 10 seconds. But let's wait a minute, okay? Because the question says, how long will it take the package to hit the ground? So we know that in reality, we don't have a negative time. After you start an event, going forward from that point, you cannot have a negative time. So that is why in this case, the t equals to negative 10 seconds, even though it's one of the solutions when we solve this. But in this case, it is not a solution. So you have to cancel that. So because we call it an extraneous solution. So our solution in this case is the positive 10 seconds. So that's the end of this video. Thank you so much.